Welcome back to Stars and Gripes. And first up this week, businessman Kevin O'Leary, and you might know him from Shark Tank. Well, he was locked in a fairly heated debate on CNN this week, suggesting that the China tariffs should actually be even larger.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough.
Well, joining me this week from New York is filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, thank you so much for joining us. Now, this panel with O'Leary, the CNN journalist there, they did not like this proposition he was putting forward. Very controversial. Obviously, it would send prices soaring. But I think what a lot of people are missing from this interaction is the fact that that's what Trump set out to do. He wants people not to buy Chinese products. He wants them to buy American. What do you make of it?
Yeah, look, China is a bad actor on the economic stage, no question about it. And I'm certainly here for tariffs on China. China is a company that dumps steel. They have tariffs on us. They steal intellectual property. We want to try to make sure they are able to join the nation of free markets, right? Okay. And if we do that through tariffs, I'm all for that. Whether it be 100%, 400%, look, I'm not here to quibble on that. 400 seems a little bit too high to me, but I'm here for that. My issue is the tariffs in general and how we're using them. Like I've said from the beginning, if we're using these tariffs as a tactic, I'm all for it. If they're a strategy, I've got a problem, right? What we don't want to do is we don't want to get China more business. And when you're tariffing the world, you're kind of forcing them not to do business with you, but to move toward a place like China, which has a large market, which produces things, not as high quality as us. Obviously, they don't have the economic buying power that we do, but it's a number two for sure. So we don't want to move them there, right? And I think what you have here is a real philosophical fight between two sides of the Trump administration. You've got the Peter Navarro on one side and Scott Bessent on the other. And the reporting that we have coming out is that it was Peter Navarro who, in fact, was winning this when the tariffs were put on them. They were meant to be strategic. They were meant to be, hey, we're not going to negotiate. This is not a negotiating tactic. This is a long-term plan to create a new U.S. economy. Right? And I think when the markets began to fail, both the stock equity markets and the bond markets, Scott Bessent started getting the ear of the president, and he started moving more towards Scott Bessent. Look, when it comes to those two philosophies, the Peter Navarro philosophy of the philosophy of economic static wealth, that is, free trade is zero sum. There's only a certain static pie, wealth, and resources that we have to compete for. It's a false economic philosophy that has proven, neo-mercantilism has been proven wrong for generations. This is a country that's been built on free trade. It's a globe that's been built on free trade. The success that we've had economically, both for our country and the entire world, is based on the idea of open markets and free trade. So look, I'm glad the president made his shift. I'm not sure that was the intent going in. I don't know. I don't care how he got there. He got there, and I think we're all better for it.
Well said. Well, moving on now, because MSNBC has firmly positioned itself as being on the side of violent gang members in America illegally. Now, in my opinion, this is one of those very rare 90-10 issues that no one serious or reasonable thinks that it is morally wrong to deport an illegal immigrant, especially if they have committed a crime or have gang links. Now, in Australia, both major parties are on board with this, but in America, you get these Democrat pockets and deranged journalists who take the most incomprehensible stance on illegal immigration. Now, this is MSNBC's news coverage of the issue.
I would like to know who's the camera crew that was hired to film this propaganda, and what company is literally exploiting the men in these videos for what?
And what would you do if you knew who filmed it? What would you do with that information? What exactly is MSNBC trying to say here? Now let's bring Ami back. And I do agree to an extent that any video like that it has the hallmarks of propaganda, and that's kind of what it is. That's probably fair enough. But the way that these journalists are looking at this issue, it's with the most sympathetic and charitable lens possible, associated to people who we are being told have links to gangs, have committed crimes. It's, I think, as a journalist, a fairly untenable position to take to the community. And I just wonder if they're ever going to learn their lesson on this one issue.
Well, they haven't learned it yet, right? I mean, they lost an election because of the 70-30 issues and their failure to be on the right side of these issues. No, they haven't learned it. I don't know when they will. Hopefully they won't, and they're going to lose the midterm as well. Understand that there's a philosophy behind this, okay? If I'm going to give them those charitable view of this, is that they're not looking at this from a political lens, they're looking from a philosophical lens. And their philosophy is this: look, there's two sides. There's two sides, and they're really two sides of the same coin. There's the hard left, right? And the hard left, makes up 25% of the Democratic Party, which believes in absolutely no borders, right? Total open borders. I know that sounds fantastical. I know that sounds improbable or not possible. I'm telling you, it's the truth. I did a video where I actually went to the left in New York and I said, what do you think of borders? Simple as that. And they told me borders are evil. Borders are wrong, right? That is really what they've done. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. This is a certain percentage of belief of the Democratic Party. The rest of the Democratic Party, the other 70% Democratic Party, while they don't believe in open borders necessarily, they do believe in turning a blind eye toward illegal immigration. And they're doing that because they believe in the browning of America. They do think that by bringing in more people from the South, that they're going to have a permanent majority, political majority. Happens to be absolutely misguided and wrong, and maybe one of the great strategic mistakes the Democratic Party has ever made, because what we're seeing from people coming across the border from the South is that over a generation, they tend to become Republicans because they have very conservative beliefs. They're actually fleeing the failure of economic philosophy, the Marxism and socialism of their country, and they're looking for economic freedom. They're coming from a Catholic conservative social background. So they tend to move toward the Republican Party. And they're paying the price for it politically and philosophically.
Well said. Well, moving on now. We love The View on this show, and Whoopi Goldberg has recently turned her show into a resistance movement.
We want each and every one of you to have a great day, everyone. Take a little time to enjoy The View. And remember, the resistance is real. You're not alone. We'll see you tomorrow.
What exactly are we resisting? A democratically elected government doing exactly what it said it would do. It seems a little democracy denial to me. Now, Ami, let's bring you back in. And I'm being a bit cheeky when I say that, but I think there's parallels to this, right? And the Democrats and huge swaths of the media went through this phase that you're denying the election result and you're not respecting the will of the people by asking questions. And I think that they actually had a good point in a lot of what they were saying. And I think the right maybe went a bit too far in some of that rhetoric. But then they are just as guilty. And as soon as their guy doesn't win, it's the same as, Hillary Clinton after she lost. Then she went around and was saying, well, basically he's an illegitimate president. You get all this rhetoric, not my president. And now you've got these serious journalists, Whoopi Goldberg, obviously, I don't put in that category, but you have serious journalists who are putting forward this proposition that it is their place to be a resistance, a political resistance to the elected president. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, The View, the gift that keeps on giving. No question about it, man. Whoopi Goldberg, first of all, let me just say, she delivered that line without any verve or vigor. She seemed defeated when she said it, right? You may have said you were kind of cheeky about it, but I don't think you were wrong, right? The Democratic Party, the party of democracy. Let's not forget, it was the party of democracy that tried to take Trump off the ballots, right, in a number of states. The party of democracy that said the Supreme Court was illegitimate. It was the party of democracy that wants illegals to vote. It was the party of democracy that wanted to abolish the Electoral College. So, yeah, look, you said that, like you said, kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm not sure how far you are from the truth. They're really not the most democratic, the Democratic Party. I think it's not aptly named in this particular case.
Time for a bit of a rebrand. Well, moving on, the journalists who are obsessed with identity politics and who have sacrificed linguistic truth to a rabble of activists. They're so funny when they can't even follow their own rules.
Back with Senator Bernie Sanders. I want to introduce Grace Thomas. She's a local civil rights attorney. She's a Democrat. Grace?
They, them pronouns, actually. Thank you.
Oh.
Good evening, Senator Sanders. Polling and turnout data indicate that men of all racial demographics are turning away from the Democratic Party.
I mean, my favourite part of that clip is that you've got Bernie Sanders, who is just squinting at this woman, trying to figure out what on earth just happened. But then you've got Anderson Cooper, he's accidentally committed the cardinal sin. He's misgendered someone live on TV, and he just lets out this, oh.
Yeah. That look was, he's bewildered look. It was his Joe Biden look, right, on the camera. Like, what is going on here? Look, yes, he committed a sin, but this is really less about him and more about her, right? I am empathetic to somebody who's transgender. I have no question that people have body dysmorphia. Gender dysmorphia. They also have body dysmorphia. And that if somebody asked me to call them a different pronoun, he, she, that's fine. I'm happy to do it. I'm not willing to change language for you, though, right? I'm not willing to call a single person a plural. It's just not the way the language works. And unless, of course, maybe you're multiple personalities, maybe you might have a case there. But what kind of narcissism do you have to call somebody out on television when you clearly, in their language, present as a woman and are a woman, look like a woman, to correct a journalist when you're trying to make a political point, nothing to do with the topic at hand? Yeah, the story is really about her and less about him. But yes, I'm sure that he was berated by many people on his side about what he did and why he did it. And he looked at them saying, maybe those Republicans were right. I don't know.
Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.